that President Putin's war on Ukraine has failed, and he said Russia will emerge from the war as a lesser power. This comes on the heels of Putin using his country's Victory Day speech to justify the war, pointing to new so-called Nazi threats in Ukraine. We hear some analysis from a Ukrainian now living in the U.S. who has connections with people in his homeland. He's also the founder of a Nevada management consulting firm. Please welcome Yuri Vanetik, who's a managing partner at Vanetik International. Thanks for coming on the show, Yuri.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, the top intel official in the U.S. says President Putin is ready for a prolonged war in Ukraine. Do you agree with this stance, and why?
I do. I believe that Moscow, the Kremlin, I believe that they're determined. They need to save face, and their position is such that if they don't, it could challenge their authority and the respect that they're getting from their people. A lot of things are propaganda driven, and by virtue of all of this, they really don't have much of a ramp off. Ergo, they'll keep going.
And what are the implications of a prolonged war in terms of U.S. inflation and as well as taxpayer money being used as aid to Ukraine?
Well, certainly, gas is going up and is going to go up. I think it's going to have. We're going to see inflation escalate. At the same time, the security sector, the proverbial Lockheed Martins of the world, the Raytheons, are going to rally. They're going to do better because during war, certain industries are called upon and certain industries mobilize. So it's having global impact. This is not just a war between two countries. This is in many ways an existential war with dictatorships, and it's an existential war for Ukraine.
Now, according to the Washington Post, a diplomatic path to ending the war is unlikely, as both Russia and Ukraine have confidence on the battlefield. What do you expect to happen now that Russia has apparently retreated from Kyiv and gained ground in the Donbas region?
I suspect that Ukraine will keep gaining ground. Ukrainian troops are formidable. They're great at guerrilla warfare. The Russians have proven to be ill-prepared, confused. At the same time, the Russians have rockets, and they're continue to target civilians and strategic targets in Ukraine. But I believe that Kyiv will remain free, and I believe that Ukrainians will continue driving the Russians out. But it will not end quickly.
Has there been any barbarity on the side of the Russians during this war? And if so, what does that mean for Ukrainians and neighboring countries going forward?
There has been unequivocally, and I, based on open source and based on my friends on the ground in Ukraine, and I have quite a few good contacts there and friends, some of the war crimes have been deliberate. For example, civilian targets, hospitals, schools, the murders. At the same time, some have been just a function of the essence of war is barbarity. And what you have is you have angry, desperate people. You have incredible hatred and anger now, on both sides, but, it's justified in many ways from the Ukrainian side. I think what it does is it will disrupt social solidarity in the West and all over the world because, we're trying to prove that there shouldn't be barbarity in the 21st century, and yet we're seeing it. So it's profoundly disruptive.
Yuri Vanetik, Vanetik International, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.